44 countries, 2 daughters, Olympic Games, CEO. You're living what most people put on a vision board.
90% of the planning for that top 10% that everyone sees actually happens before event day. So there's a lot of work to be going behind any type of event. It's January, live the next 12 months your best life. And I realized that I wasn't living my best life. 6 months later, I still hadn't received $1 from my work. If things are falling apart, people will be led by your energy. Event people, they're like those beautiful yellow fluffy ducks. They look beautiful, or a swan on a river, floating, swimming away. But underneath, their little legs are going like this. I think the thing that really kills the deal from the start is talking about what the sponsorship will do for the event in terms of being too centric about the event.
Okay.
Because sponsorship is actually about the sponsor.
The world needs more women who
do extraordinary things all the time, every day.
Welcome to the Ravi Athale Perspective, the show where we sit down with the extraordinary people who are building extraordinary lives and businesses, and we find out exactly how they do it. I'm your host, Ravi Athale, and if you're someone who wants real stories, real struggles, and real growth, make sure you subscribe, because the next story might just change the way you think. Today's guest has done something that most of us only watch on television. She has planned and executed some of the biggest events on the planet. The Olympic Games, the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, the Commonwealth Games, the Asian Games, the Australian Super Yacht Rendezvous, the G20 Leaders Summit. Today, she helps women business owners host six-figure in-person events and crush it with event sponsorship. She's an international speaker. She's the chair of the Major Events Business Group in Queensland, and she's preparing for Brisbane 2032 Olympics and the Paralympic Games. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Hello, Ravi. It's great to be here.
Pleasure is mine. Before we go anywhere else, I just want to say, Lauren, 44 countries, 2 daughters, Olympic Games, CEO. You're living what most people put on a vision board. So I want to know everything about Lauren. Let's start at the very beginning. Lauren, take me back. Where did the journey start? Was there a moment in your younger life where you thought, this is it? This is what I am meant to be?
Okay, I love those questions. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here on your show. So for me, where the journey started was I was always an athlete. I started running in athletics since I was 7. And then I played basketball. So sports was always part of my lifestyle. And I remember in my teenage years, my mother saying, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? And she'd always said, choose something that you love so you don't have to feel that you've ever worked a day. And so taking my love for sport, I reached a certain level, but I never reached the national gold level status. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to help and be part of these major sporting events. If I'm not going to be an athlete, I wanted to be part of it. So I went in and studied sports management as a degree. I studied at Deakin University.
Okay.
Yes, so it was a Bachelor of Commerce, and then there was a major in sports management, and I also did a major in marketing. But it really came from being a sports girl, a sporty girl, and just loving what it means to be at an event and striving. And then I brought that into then what I wanted to do in my everyday lifestyle.
Fair enough. So Lauren, when you first got into events world, was it glamorous immediately, or was it a grind before the glory?
Look, yeah, it's still work. You still have to go to an office. So I had the blessing of being employed by the Football Association over in England. So you can imagine, Ravi, being an Australian, being hired by the English football, and everybody in the pubs were like, how come you're Australian and you're working at the English football? Like, how did you get that job? And so there is a lot of work because you're planning, you're doing a lot of the organising, but then obviously the event day, whether it's a sporting event, whether it's the FA Cup final or a business event, that's where I suppose the glamour is. But I think that's actually the misconception in the market about events, because everyone sees what it is on event day. I like to call the iceberg effect, because everyone that attends it, whether you see it on the TV, whether you go to an event or whether you go to a gala dinner and everything's looking glamorous and there's media walls and there's the media and there's the videographer and the photographer, or a sporting event and there's grandstands, but it's actually in the planning, and that's below the iceberg. So 90% of the planning for that top 10% that everyone sees actually happens before event day. So there's a lot of work to be going behind any type of event.
Okay, I've got a question here. At the time of Ashes, do the English likes you?
Let me say this. When the FA Cup final was coming out to play, I had a lot of friends wanting to buy me a beer at the pub.
Okay.
Because I could have access to tickets.
Yeah, I've seen the rivalry, Sydney Cricket Ground, Melbourne Cricket Ground. I've been there. England versus Australia. It's as bad as India versus Pakistan. All right, Lauren, 22 years. That is not an accident. That is commitment. So what kept you in this industry when other people might have walked up?
Yeah, I think when it comes to events, it's about creating that vision, and then you actually see the vision fulfilled. And then it's also making decisions. For me, I made decisions in terms of what does my lifestyle look like, being a woman and in business, and also wanting to have a family. So one of the decisions that I made very consciously was to move out of the major event employment network and step out on my own, so that then I could make certain decisions that still enabled me to be involved in events, but I could then have the decision as to where I lived, what country it was, when I worked, maybe I was having children, and what that season of life is. So I think that for me personally, because of that decision, it enabled me to have a long career span in the event world and the different types of events that I've worked on.
Yeah. So let me ask you something, Lauren, that I think a lot of people wonder. Events at the mega level, the Olympics, the FIFA World Cup, the Commonwealth Games, the Asian Games, the Australian Super Yacht Rendezvous, the G20 Summit. What is it actually like inside those operations? Paint us the picture. What is happening behind the scene that the camera never show?
I think if you're thinking about what it looks like on event day, like when you actually go live,
Yes.
what the TV is showing at a sporting event is the field of play and the sports and the referees and the audience. But behind the scenes, when you're working on it, everyone's connected by radio.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of communication in terms of catering. Maybe there's an issue in one of the VIP boxes and a light switch isn't working, or a door isn't opening, or there's too many people at a ticketing booth or a ticketing concourse and it's becoming to be too populated by personnel. And so decisions need to be quickly made through the radio to effectively flow the people out so there's no crushing within a stadium. So there's a lot of eyes going on behind what everyone is focused on the field of play. There's a lot of focus on the team that are all connected by those radios to ensure that there's flow happening behind the scenes.
So I'm already completely fascinated now, because you have been in rooms that most people will only ever see through a television screen. And you made a choice, a very deliberate choice to take all of that power and channel it in a completely different direction. Let's talk about that turning point. You mentioned two major turning points in your journey. The first one was splitting with your business partner, a very specific moment. You were on the cover of a magazine, 3-page article inside, and you realized that you were not living what the article said. Tell me about the moment, Lauren. What did it feel like to be celebrated publicly while privately something was off?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's through action, and you're never sometimes going to know what a result's going to be unless you do the action, first and foremost. Could I have foreseen that? No. You have to step through these situations.
Okay.
And I think that's where, even if there's fear or is a partnership the right option, not sure. Does it feel good? Does it make sense at the time? Are you making the decision based on the current knowledge? Yes. So you step forward on that action. Then as you go through that action, just like a path when you're going for a walk up a mountain, for this example, I was really surprised because I was working with my business partner. We were working on this front cover journey for 3 months prior. It was the January edition, so it was about setting up the whole year ahead. So we were naturally excited about being on the cover of a women's magazine and really be able to share our business. And so for me, it was a surprise because I remember being in my apartment, about to sit down with the magazine in my hand. So it's physically in my hands. I'm placing it down on the coffee table in front of me. As you can imagine, I'm taking a seat and I'm about to flick through the articles. And all of a sudden, my mind just went to that epiphany moment where I went, I'm saying in this article, live your best life. It's January. Live the next 12 months your best life. And I realized that I wasn't living my best life. So I think it was important that I listened to that thought in my brain that gave me that information. And then I took steps, even though it's difficult and it was a hard decision to make. It was one of those fork in the road decisions that maybe you've had in your career and many of your listeners, your audience may have, where you have a fork in the road decision.
All the time.
Yeah. And even if it's hard, it can be the right decision. So you don't steer away, even though it's a hard decision to make. Don't steer away from that if you feel within your heart, within your mind, that's the direction and that's right for you moving forward. And so that was quite a significant time.
Yes, this is such a powerful and honest thing to admit, Lauren. When the world is applauding you, it takes real self-awareness to say, wait, I'm not happy. How long did you sit with that before made a move?
I probably digested this information for about a week. I moved with it, I understood it, I was looking at my options, and then I made the official approach to split from my business partner, which was my first business.
And the second turning point, going out on your own, and you had to make a decision about whether you could have both a business and a family. What was going through your head during that season?
I think for me, it was around having that ability to make choices in your life. So when you're working for a company or working for sporting events or whatever the case might be, wherever that major event was determined where I was then going to live. And I knew that was then going to be the path for the next 10, 20 years if I decided to continue on that track. So I made a very conscious decision to then look and go, how do I want to live the next 10, 20 years? How do I make that my best life?
Okay.
And then that was the decision that I thought that then I had more, that I could have the choice. And I always believe in a choice and a freedom to be able to live in whichever country you want to be able to live in, work on the projects that you want to be able to work in, pivot within your business when you want to be or when there's an opportunity. Because whenever you're going in business as Ravi, new doors open.
It does.
And then you make those decisions, don't you, along the way? Oh, there's a door. You never may have seen that door before, but now the door opens and you walk through it. Right. And so it was that first initial thought thinking, how do I want to live that next 10, 20 years?
That's a bold decision, to be honest. Lauren, a lot of women listening right now are sitting with that exact question. Can I really have both? What would you say to them in this moment?
I fundamentally believe that you can.
Okay.
And it is one of my missions to really be able to enable women to see that you can have both. You can run a business, you can be a mother, and you can just understand that we all move through seasons. I see it's a season of life. Obviously, when you are birthing a child and you're in a newborn stage, honor that time, because that's a beautiful time of your life to be with your child. And then as you move through and you have different decisions along the way, Then you can move through in terms of how you're going to be managing, leading a team. What team does that mean for you to bring on? How do you best operate? And so I believe that you can have it all. And it's just changing. And I think the world has changed quite fundamentally in terms of the ability to be able to work from home, co-working spaces. How many entrepreneurial places are there now that beautiful minds can come together in an office environment, but they're working for themselves? So there's still an element of community.
That's right.
But then you can all come together and really support each other in making those choices moving forward.
Lauren, you chose to bet on yourself. What was the first year actually like? Was it messy, real, nobody's watching version? I want to know what happened. What was it?
Yeah. Look, you're learning to ride a bike. Who is an Olympic champion as soon as they ride a bike?
No one.
Not many. I don't think anyone is. So it's all a learning curve. So actually, Branched Out is my fourth business.
Okay.
So it was Inapulse, which was the event management that I first opened up. And then that led me into opening up another couple of businesses. And then it was Branched Out that I came out with in terms of really being passionate about helping women to be able to produce their own events, run their own events in their business growth. And so they don't have the stress and the strain and the logistical burdens. And what I hear so often is women that are running events and men that, because of that iceberg effect, like we mentioned before,
yes,
that's a great tie-in, because there is a lot of work to produce an event and it's unknown until you do so.
So, Lauren, I just want to know, because people listening or watching this, how old were you when you started your first business or venture? And the Branch Out was the fourth one. So can you just put it in order? How old were you? And what was the first business, second business, third business, and the last one was the Branch Out?
Yes, okay. So the first one I would have been around 35.
Okay.
Maybe even 34. I'd have to really count back, actually. Mm-hmm. So it could be about 34. So that was with my business partner.
Okay.
So the number 2 was then my event management company. Number 3 was phone charging services for events. So you'll start to see a theme here. And then number 4 was Branched Out, which is events for entrepreneurs and coaches and service providers globally.
That is extraordinary. I reckon not many people do it. They do it 1 and 2 and they are gone with the wind. This is extraordinary stuff, Lauren. Good on you.
Thank you very much.
All right. And now looking back at both of those turning points, Lauren, do you think you had to go through them exactly the way you did? Or is there a version where you got to the same place faster?
Oh, I do believe that everything happens for a reason and that you do learn through those actions. Like I remember Ravi, very early when I went out on my own with the number 2 business, event management, I was working with a client and he didn't pay. But I was in that journey. I was very early on in my entrepreneurial journey. And so the lesson there was I was so driven to be able to work on this event. I wanted the accolade of having this event on my bio so then I can share that with another client in the future. And so I wanted to work with this client to produce this event. 6 months later, I still hadn't received $1 for my work. And so I think I needed to go through that journey to ensure that I had better contracts in place, that I had better policies in place, that at the end of the day, it's just like being an accountant. When you hire someone for services, it's milestones, and having that self-worth that somebody has hired you for your service, and then knowing that then if they do not pay, that then you enable them to look at a resolution. But if they don't pay, then you make the decision of what action you're going to make.
I reckon it's the learning curve for everyone. I think after suffering, man becomes a better person. And that is what happened with you. All that learning could be good, bad, ugly. And you try to become a good, better version of yourself.
That's right. And I think I knew that you work for somebody if you don't pay. Some of these examples, and you think, oh, people might be listening to this now and go, oh, I wouldn't let that happen. But until you're in the situation, that's the learning, because then you're applying the action and those decisions and making decisions. And it's only through that experience do you work through that you become a better person, because now you've learnt that lesson.
I love that framing. And I want to get into what I think is the heart of your work, Lauren, because you didn't just build a business, you build a methodology, a system. And I want to know exactly how it works. So, Lauren, let's define terms for our audience. When you say event monetization, what does that actually mean? And what are most entrepreneurs getting wrong about events before they find you?
Okay, excellent. So I think for the first question, in terms of what is event monetization, so I look at a profit first strategy. And so I look at how are you building an event and making decisions based on a profit first, and being very clear with your objectives so that your event reflects what your business goals are. And in terms of monetization, it's not just ticketing. And that's where a lot of entrepreneurs also get it wrong. So in terms of answering number two, many entrepreneurs are looking at you only receive revenue through ticket sales. But actually, I work on a profit first methodology where I work with entrepreneurs on how to bring in sponsorships to offset and bring in capital before you even launch.
Okay.
So that you might attract 10, 20, 30, $100,000, whatever the case is for your event. And then that helps put down money on the venue, puts the deposit down on the venue. It may enable you to hire that videographer or the staging or the AV or the equipment that you want at the event. It takes the risk away from the entrepreneur because it's not their own capital that they're invested in. And so that's the second lesson in terms of building the money first, launching. Sponsors then receive additional visibility and exposure during that launch because now they're sponsoring your event. Plus, when you have those sponsors on board and you go into ticket sales, events sponsorships can help offset what those ticket prices might be.
Okay.
So, for example, an Olympic Games, if the Olympic Games never had a sponsor, imagine how much ticket sales would be for the audience to go to a stadium. And so by having sponsorships first, that revenue is, and of course you can bring on sponsors throughout the journey, but it can help offset the actual price to enable more of your attendees to be able to attend your event. And depending on what the goal is of an event, so if you were looking at it as a lead generation event or a conference style of event, you can then have sponsorships, ticketing sales, you might have merchandise, and you might then also have back-end sales. So that might be, you might be selling into your product or your service at your event, or they're funneled through by joining your community, and then you may sell them into one of your programs because at the event themselves, they've learned the skill, a piece of knowledge, depending on what the industry is or what that topic is, but they know that then they like working with you, they like hearing you, they like your vibe, they like your energy, they like how you are connecting with everyone, that then that audience member may then buy one of your programs moving forward.
You've also mentioned about six-figure events. So can you just walk me through from concept to cash in the bank? What is it?
So that could be, for example, $40,000 worth of sponsorships and $80,000 worth of ticketing, and then offset that by what those expenses are. So there can be a six-figure profit margin. Plus then, because of those attendees that are in the room, they then might buy, say your conversion rate is 30% and you have 100 people, and you then convert 30% of your room into your $5,000 offer. Now you're entering into multiple six figures.
Okay, makes sense.
Does
And
that
Lauren,
make
you talk about women entrepreneurs specifically. running events without the weight of every logistical decision on their shoulders. The phrase jumped out at me. What is happening in the industry right now that makes women carry that weight?
I think that a lot of the time, as women, you're managing your business, and
Hmm.
most likely your event is an added on to your business. So you're already serving clients, you're already working with clients, you might have team members, and then you have suppliers, and then you have a family. So there's lots of roles that you're playing. So when it comes to an event, there's lots of decisions that you need to be able to make on that. And without the right journey, the right framework, because one of the things that I see many women entrepreneurs get wrong, not all, but many, is a very short lead time.
Okay.
Thinking that it takes 2 months to produce a conference when you might actually need 9 months. And what happens is if there's a really short lead time when you're running an event, that then it bottlenecks in the journey, because for my framework, I've discovered that there's 6 key phrases of running an event. Really, if it's an Olympic Games, if it's a conference or a business conference or a networking event, to be honest, even if it's a 10-year-old birthday party,
Okay.
there is.
All right. All the women wanting to be next Lauren, how they're going to actually land meaningful sponsorship? What are they supposed to do?
When it comes to event sponsorships, I think one of the key problems that I see in the market is that because you're so passionate about your event, right? You're so passionate about your business. You're so passionate about how you help people, whether you're a marketer, a social media, graphics designer, a business leadership coach, whatever your methodology is, because you're so passionate within yourself, you think that then that's automatically going to translate to somebody else, and then they want to be able to support your event. But unfortunately, that may not be the case. When it comes to sponsorships, it's really around identifying what type of sponsor is the best sponsor for that industry, for that community, for that audience, for that price point, and really about what the sponsor wants to be able to gain out of that partnership. Because at the end of the day, sponsorship is a win-win scenario. It's a real partnership in terms of sharing resources and credibility and authority, and really knowing what the sponsor wants to be able to gain out of joining as a partner, as a sponsor of an event.
All the women in Brisbane wanting to be next Lauren, give her a call or take her for a cuppa on this coming weekend. She'll tell you everything, I reckon. What is the number one mistake people make when approaching sponsors? The one that kills the deal before it even starts.
I think the thing that really kills the deal from the start is talking about what the sponsorship will do for the event, in terms of being too centric about the event.
Okay.
Because sponsorship is actually about the sponsor. What does the sponsor want to be able to receive from the sponsorship? What does the sponsor want to be able to do as part of their partnership with the event? Do they want to attend the event? Do they not? Do they want to look at social media? What's that relationship? So by being too focused on their own business, then they're not focused in the direction on the sponsor themselves.
Okay. And Lauren, you work with clients in 3 ways: mentoring, consulting, and done for you agency service. What kind of clients is each model right for? Or should I say, how do people know which lane they should be in?
I think it's probably looking at what resources they have. So, most likely, a done for you service works really well for 7-figure entrepreneurs when really they want to know that they have a service provider that knows what they're doing, that they're self accountable, and that they're going to then be delivering on those milestones. Often, what I find is that a done with you, which is when I move into more of a mentoring process, they are generally within a 6-figure range. So they may have a VA or a marketing coordinator or a 2IC that works with them.
Yeah.
So it's either themselves or their second in charge that will come to those mentoring sessions, and I help them to guide them along the process, and then they do the doing. But they definitely come to me for those challenges or that problem resolution. And then when I say I move into more consulting, that's when I'm working at a more strategic level. So that could be with councils, large corporations, from a consulting business growth strategy that they want to be able to implement.
All right. Lauren, you come from the mega event world, logistically, operationally. What is the single most important lesson from the Olympic stage that every small business event organizer needs to know?
I think it's being calm. So even if things are falling apart, people will be led by your energy. So if you're running around at your business event and you're stressed and you're frazzled and you're worried that the next speaker hasn't arrived, or you're worried that the AV didn't work, or you're worried that the time has gone over by 5 minutes, that energy translates them through the room. So take it easy. Be like, I like to say, as event people, they're like those beautiful yellow fluffy ducks. They look beautiful, or a swan on a river, floating, swimming away. But underneath, their little legs are going like this. So it's being calm and be able to make decisive and quick decisions and not let that energy portray out to everyone else, because when you do, then that energy does get carried out by others in the room.
Yeah. What is the biggest thing that has ever gone wrong for you?
I think what just quickly comes to mind is I was doing event management for a conference. And so you can imagine that I was meeting with all of the speakers throughout the day, and they were then arriving to the venue at different times throughout the day because they were speaking at different time slots, right? I remember then looking that and we had asked that every speaker arrives 2 hours before their time to be on stage, so that we knew that they're there on site, they can have a coffee, and then they come to us to be able to be mic'd and prepared, and then they're ready next to the stage.
Okay.
This is probably 8 years ago or so. I remember being at the event and the next speaker hadn't yet arrived. So I called him and I said, will you be on site? I'm just checking in to see when you'll be arriving. And they said, oh, we're up at the Sunshine Coast. Now, the event was in Brisbane. That was about an hour and 20 minutes away.
Door in Sunshine Coast.
That's right. And he said, I'll be there. And I said, what time? And he said, oh, I'll be there at 1 o'clock. And now it's already 1:20. I said, when? He goes, oh, tomorrow. So we had the event date wrong.
Oh.
So within that moment, I then had to make a decisive, quick decision. Who was then going to be on next on stage? So I had to quickly make my decisions, shuffle things around, solve the next speaker. And then I just informed the client that this was the change. And in the audience, no one knew any different.
For a woman entrepreneur listening right now who's thinking about hosting her first in-person event, what is the first question she needs to answer before she does anything else?
I think the first question will be, what is the event purpose? Why do you want to host the event? What's the objective? Who do you want in the room? How are we going to reach them? So before you go to launch, sit in concept phase first. Who's this for? Where does this event sit in the client journey with you?
Okay.
Is it more of a lead generation event where it's a cold audience? Or is it a warmer event where it might be part of your current clients or existing clients or previous clients or members within your YouTube channel, and they already know you, and then you want to draw them in? So what topics is going to appeal to them in that business journey with you? So you can understand where that event is in that life cycle. And when you can align that effectively for your business, for where your clients are in that journey, that's when the event becomes a sellout, because you're producing an event that fits the right stage of that journey.
That is so correct. For the audience, I want to take a quick beat here and just acknowledge something, because I think Lauren is describing bigger than events. It's a mindset shift. It is treating your business like a professional athlete treats their sport. Lauren, you actually talk about this. Let's go there. You said something
Yeah.
that I wrote down immediately. In business, you have got to act like a professional athlete. Tweak your skill set, learn new strategies, focus on mindset. I want to unpack that, Lauren. What does it actually look like to train like an athlete when your arena is business?
Yes, well, I think it's around looking after your skills. Then it's also looking at your health, your mindset. As a professional athlete, they go through seasons. They're not always in top form.
Yeah,
But then how do they move through? So there might be stages of the year or 2 years or whatever the case is when you're having downtime, when you're having strategy time, when you're in creative mode. Plus, also as like a professional athlete, they might have 3 coaches with them. Same as in business, you might have a marketing coach. You might have Ravi who's helping you to be able to put podcasts together.
that's right.
That's right. Knowing that as an athlete, as a business person, there's different skills that you need to know and learn from. So you can have different coaches along the journey that help you to get there faster. And I think that's what I've always strongly believed in. I want to be able to learn from people that have done it before, that are ahead of me, that I want to be able to learn. How did you learn from those mistakes so that I don't make them? Or they can watch me in my work or the decisions I make, and they might be able to tweak it because they see it from a different viewpoint. Same as if you are a basketball and you're shooting for the goal. A basketball coach might be able to tweak 1%, but that 1% makes a difference.
Lauren, women in business are balancing motherhood like you, family, and business. This is something you feel deeply about. So, what is the conversation that is not happening loudly enough in the entrepreneurship world around this? You being a woman, especially.
Look, I think at times are certainly changing. And I think as women that they are then presenting that during pregnancy, having a baby, it doesn't change whether you're still going to be able to make decisions and be able to work. I have had people say to me, oh, Lauren, if you're going to have a baby, what's that going to do for your career? And I was taken back by that, thinking, what do you mean? This is life. At the end of the day, it's life. And becoming a mother doesn't have limitations or distraction on whether you're going to be able to run a business or be there for your clients. It still comes back to, is that person credible and going to continue in business? And it's not about just because someone had a baby, or even for that factor, Ravi, I believe also in travel. I believe that you can travel, you can be running your business in another state, in another country. You don't have to be sitting behind that office. And I think COVID changed that work style. I think it was the phrase, the world's greatest experiment, in
Yes.
terms of the ability to be able to be work from home.
The new
And
norm.
so I think that adoption has now taken place more so. There's still, of course, credibility for organizations to come together and have in-person connections. But I think it's definitely the change that just because a woman is having a baby, it doesn't change what that means from a business side of things.
So, Lauren, you have 2 daughters. What do you want them to see when they watch you build branched out?
I want them to see that in life you have a choice and that you always have a choice. You have a choice as to where you live, how you live. If you want to improve in something, you have the choice of finding the resources to do so. There's so many free resources out there if money is a challenge. Or if you do then have that income, to then invest in coaching. There's always resources to be able to take you to where you want to go. And just having that resilience in knowing the direction. And not everyone might agree with you. And listen to those people that have led that life that you wanted to be able to lead, rather than listening to someone that doesn't have the life that you want.
So, Lauren, becoming unstoppable. So, what does unstoppable actually mean in practice?
I think unstoppable means that you can recognize that you might have fear, that you might be a little bit worried about making a decision or taking an action. You might have some challenges that are thrown your way, but it's about being unstoppable, that you have the resilience and just that strength to continue. So even if you have fear, it's the courage to step through that fear. It might be that you break down this big action into small steps, and just doing those incremental steps each day develops and overcomes that fear. So that's what I believe is becoming unstoppable, that you can continue, you build that resilience, you build micro steps, you work through your mindset, you look at what do I want to be able to achieve, and that famous saying like, do you want to have regret or do you want to know that you've taken that action?
Precisely.
So to me, that's what unstoppable means.
Someone told me, and he said, Ravi, it's a human mindset or mentality. What happens is, for example, I wanted to start this podcast. I was waiting for last 6 months, last year, that, okay, am I supposed to do it? I'm not really that young, and I don't know how people are going to take it. And I was just overthinking. And there was a point when I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I started this on 26th of January. It's an Australia Day. And it's an Indian Republic Day. India became Republic on the same day. And I said, all right, I'm going to give it a go. Whatever happens, I'm not going to regret. So I'm just giving an example to the context that we try to stretch thing and then eventually say, hey, I can't do it because of the fear. Because I need validation from someone that, okay, what that person is going to think of me. So on the same topic, Lauren, fear. What has fear cost you personally in your career?
I think fear, it's that you might then have held back by making the phone call or doing the approach, or even a simple thing as a social media post. Like at the end of the day, like what you just said, what other people think. Who's other people? And don't you think that when you've achieved that objective, people will either support you or not? And that's on them. That's not on you.
Someone told me again, someone's opinion about me does not have to become my reality.
Correct.
You talk about visualizing yourself achieving the result and then acting from that place. Can you walk us through exactly how you practice that? Is that meditation? Is that journaling? What is that?
Mindset, meditation, stepping into who's that person that you want to be? What is she? How is she acting? What conversation is she having? What conversation with Ravi is she enjoying in terms of this dialogue that we're having? What does that person look like? What does she act? How does she breathe? What are her actions? And so stepping into that future self and then acting from that. And so it's really be able to have that mindset, okay, this is the direction I want to go in, and then stepping forward and making those actions based on those thoughts.
That is so interesting. I'm very intrigued right now, Lauren. So, for the woman starting out who feels like she doesn't have enough money, time, team, what is your message to her?
Find what you can do. Step into that future self. What does she do? What are the resources? What's the next step that you can do? Who's the phone call? Who do you in your network that you might be able to work with, or you can help, or you can gain work from, or you can contract with? What's that next step? What actions would she make? What resource can you listen to? Is there some of Ravi's podcasts that you can hear? Are there YouTube channels? What lessons can you? There's so many resources. So really stepping into and then look at what does she want to achieve? And then what does 1 year look like from now? And so then you can say, wow, I am so pleased that myself 1 year ago made that phone call, even though I was a little bit scared, even though I thought, oh, what are they going to say on the other line? Make the phone call, send the email, do the social media post. Speak to podcasters, get out
Like
there.
me, Lauren, I want to talk about something that people rarely admit publicly. You shared a story about a client who did not pay for 6 months. This is a moment of real vulnerability in your business. And I think it will resonate deeply with our audience. So tell me the full story. The client who didn't pay, what happened? How long did you let it go? That is the first question. The second question would be, what was the moment you said enough is enough?
So it went over a few months. At the end of it, it was 6 months. And I did approach that person and said, hey, I haven't received the invoice or the payment. And there was always the promise, oh, I'm going to pay when this happens. I'm going to pay when that happens. And so I went along with that journey. And again, that's a lesson that I learned. And so you can either go to university and learn a lesson, or you can learn a lesson through this way. You learn lessons in multiple ways. And then it really hit me when, for myself, financially, I had house mortgages and I couldn't now pay my house mortgage. And I also had said no to other work because I still wanted to work on this event. So there was a number of things that happened that resulted in then the final point where I then actually delivered the event.
Okay.
And he still didn't pay.
So did he do that on purpose?
I can't speak to what was his intentions. All I know factually was that the payments were never received.
Okay.
And so even though I then went down the lawyer paths, and then it got to the point where then there was going to be so much more energy spent on trying to resolve it legally, I just decided that I'll go and find another way to be able to resolve this.
Because most people would have walked after 6 weeks. What kept you going, and what does that say about how we value our own expertise?
I think back then I was so driven to be able to work for myself and have the accolade of producing this event. Now I've learned that as a service provider, and I think for everyone here listening, if you then have provided a service and you have the next invoice and they haven't paid, then it is your right. You have terminology clauses within those contracts or those conversations or an email to say for any future work, it is to pay on those invoices.
What did it change, Lauren? Did it change the contract? Did it change the payment structure after that experience?
I still had it as monthly payments, but then those payments weren't then received. So for me, it meant that if payments are not received, then work ceases. So it's a stronger boundary in terms of contractor service.
So, what is the failure that taught you the most about who you are as an entrepreneur?
I think it's looking at probably the resilience, because sometimes you might work for a client and it might not work the way that you may have thought. Or during COVID, for example, in-person events were certainly a major industry that was impacted globally. And so you can't say that was a failure, but it was more of building that resilience to look at other ways, at other means, at other pathways, and being able to really know that you have a transferable skill.
That's very well said. So, Lauren, if you go back today and give a young Lauren a piece of advice, just one advice, what would that be?
I think one would be to have better contracts and ensure that your services are upheld. So I think for any business person, but I think in terms of mindset, I think it's around looking at you can do anything. You can live around the world. You can travel. You will always find a way. So Ravi, as when we've just shared, I've traveled to 44 countries. I've lived 13 years overseas. I've always known that I'm going to be able to stay somewhere, live somewhere, work somewhere. There's always going to be food on the table. It's by having that courage to step out and really live.
I so envy you. You've been to 44 countries. Let me acknowledge something right now, Lauren. What I love about this conversation is that you're not pretending anything. Nothing is fake. I could see it on your face right now. Everything is coming from the bottom of your heart and the experiences, good, bad, or ugly. You're not just sitting here telling it very easily or how easy it was for you. You're showing that every single hard thing builds something. Now let's talk about what you have built next. Branched out. I'm going to come to that now, and I'm sure that is very close to your heart. Where is it going, and what is the big vision over the next 3 to 5 years you have for Branched Out?
Let's really be able to produce events for seven-figure entrepreneurs in that done-for-you format, and knowing that they have a service provider that works on that event planning and that they can then produce. Because I think also in today's age with AI coming into play, that really those in-person experiences is of extreme value. Like what many humans experienced during COVID, we craved that human connection because we're all stuck in our own homes. And I think in-person events is the same. And right now with AI coming in, so over the next 3 to 5 years is expanding the accessibility that women entrepreneurs around the world can host events, profitable events. And like what we said before around the weight on the shoulders, because of the lead time and decisions made, that really causes stress because of things that how they roll out. And particularly when you're producing an event, a month before the event is held, there's a lot of work that comes in because there's questions to attendees, questions from sponsors, questions from service providers. And without the right systems in place, that's what causes the stress. And what I've heard from clients before they've worked with us is 1 week before their event, they just say, I'm so exhausted already. I just want this event to be over. So
Ah,
it's my mission to
okay.
be able to help women entrepreneurs be able to produce events in a really constructive, monetized, revenue driven way, and they actually enjoy it. So when they come to that 5th phase in the 6 phases of hosting an event, when they're hosting an event, they're waking up in the morning, they might go for a meditation, they might go for a run down the beach. They then enter the room and they're so joyous to be there. They want to be there with their community. It's not that because they've been up all night doing the last minute PowerPoint presentations.
A quick question here, Lauren. Why only women? Why not men?
It is open to women and men. I suppose I've been working a lot with women because it's also understanding some of those challenges that they're facing. And so it's been able to connect with women in terms of balancing the family life, the time of the day, when they might be on the school run, and then having team members in place. So there can be certain challenges that women may have that are different to men. But of course, some of my clients right now, of course, are men.
Okay. You're the founder and chair of the Major Events Business Group in Queensland, which is MEBGQ, which is specifically positioned for the lead up to Brisbane 2032. What does that role mean to you personally, Lauren? And the second question would be, what does it mean for event business in Queensland?
So, firstly, it means a lot to myself in terms of I founded the chair of the group, and we have 13 board members and we're around 80 members strong. So, it's around being an advocacy and a voice around event suppliers in the lead up to the Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games, and how those event suppliers can then be part of the games to be able to increase their capability and their capacity to be able to build their businesses in the lead up to and of course during, but also importantly beyond. So how can they gain those skills to be able to be part of an Olympic environment and then be able to continue to build on expertise
Mm-hmm.
and deliver future events moving forward? So it's really being able to bring a lot of the parts together to help the events providers on the ground to be able to achieve that and be able to present challenges that they might be facing in terms of tender processes, contracts, workforce, logistics, financial decisions along the way, and really be able to bridge that gap so that Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games are hosting a very strong event that is with the backbone of local event suppliers within Queensland.
I think it's going to benefit everyone. Lauren, you mentioned you want to bring events possible to entrepreneurs across globe. What does that world look like? What changes when more entrepreneurs are using events as a growth strategy?
Yes, I think it helps businesses to grow because they're meeting with their community in person. And it's again, as they can produce events based on where their life cycle is with that customer. And so, with branched out, there will be those done for you services as well as a lot of consulting, and then also a lot of templates and systems and packages to really be able to have effective event management in the hands of the entrepreneurs.
Lauren, you're based in Brisbane, but you have operated globally. What is your vision for how Branched Out becomes a global brand?
I think it will be looking at more partnerships around growth, around looking at how we can streamline services, being able to connect with some of my clients are in America. And so it's around how those systems, predominantly using a lot of online strategies, to be able to really have these resources in the hands of entrepreneurs globally.
So right now, it's only in Brisbane, or you have it in Australia, across locations or cities in Australia? Where is it right now?
So we're based in Brisbane, but a lot of it is based online. And then when we come to event delivery phase, so for example, if I'm working with a client in America, it might mean that there's 2 flights to the States. And then we can also then look at growing a team within those different countries. So if an event is held in America, it might mean that myself or one of my team members might be flying into America to be able to do the event delivery phase. But everything else apart from that can be all mostly achieved online.
And yeah, you've been to many countries, and that's very fascinating in the first place. But I was very intrigued when you had mentioned somewhere that you want to help educate girls in Sri Lanka. Tell me about that, because this feels like a part of Lauren that most people don't see.
I think I have a real fundamental belief that if we can bring in education in the hands of girls and boys at such a young age, then they can make their choices in life and be able to grow and expand. And they might be able to, if they were in environments that they might not have those resources, by then educating them, they may be able to then be able to move forward and change those situations. So for me, it's around just last year when I traveled to Sri Lanka, we supported a local school with stationery, with equipment, with books, with resources. We had connected with the principal of the school to ask them, what do they need? What's the resources that they need that then we can help them with? There was around 12 students that never had a school uniform.
Oh,
And so they didn't have that sense of belonging. So then that was part of the initiative. It was then uniforming 12 of the students of this school so that then those individuals, they felt that they belong in regardless of the money situation of the family at that period
so
of time.
predominantly these students they are poor, they are underprivileged, and they don't have exposure to the way other kids have it. So you're aiming and focusing on these students only, or there are other students as well?
There will be other students as well. So there may be some students that, for example, they might not have the necessary resources to be able to go to college. Maybe their family might not be able to support them to go to, they might not have internet, they might not be able to travel, they might not be able to leave the home. The family may then be relying on them to go to work and enter the workforce at a young age. So it's about trying to change those generational situations. So it's both those that may not have those resources in rural villages, and then also building in programs. So through Branched Out, through working with clientele, we can really change and make a difference to those girls that may then have an opportunity to go to university and go to college and not then need to go into that workplace.
And why only Sri Lanka?
For us, we have a very special bond with Sri Lanka. So one thing that I haven't mentioned so far is that my sister is adopted from Sri Lanka. I was 4, she was only 3 months old. So as a family, we all went to Sri Lanka for the very first time, and my parents made the decision to adopt a younger sister. So Sri Lanka's always been part of our family. It's been part of our travel. I've personally traveled to Sri Lanka around 5 or 6 times. I'm starting to lose count. And so there's a really special bond from a family connection.
That's a good work done. Everyone needs people like your mom and dad to provide this kind of facilities to underprivileged children. Could be anywhere. So yeah,
Could be
good on them.
anywhere around the world.
Anyway, so
Yeah.
Lauren, we're going to close this out with our rapid fire round. These are quick, instructive answers. But you could, so first thing, that comes to your mind. You could have one word or maybe one sentence. I'll give you that. All right, you can go with one sentence. Or let's get going then. One book that every woman entrepreneur needs to read right now.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Oh, I have read that 3 or 4 times. Good on you. The best event you have ever attended as a guest, not the one you organized.
I think like maybe the Queen's Jubilee, like a royal event in England. Going to a royal event as an attendee and being part of the crowd waving flags.
Favorite country out of the 44 you have visited?
Qatar.
Qatar. Okay. The one thing you delegate immediately and never touch?
Bookkeeping.
Bookkeeping. All right. And you delegate that to your husband or?
To a service provider.
All right. Morning routine. What are the first 30 minutes of your day?
In my mind, I repeat a phrase in terms of what the day is going to be or who I am and how I'm going to move through the day.
So you manifest.
I manifest first thing in the morning. Second is a coffee.
Which one?
A black coffee. Mm-hmm. Yes, long black.
Long black, short black.
And then the third would be going for a walk. Get outside.
All right. The hardest thing about being a CEO and a mom on the same day?
The hardest thing is giving you that time. What do you need? Because as a CEO, you're making decisions or you're working for somebody or you're working with clients or you're doing actions. As a mum, you're accessible. You are a leader to that child or working with what that child needs from you. Hardest thing is then identifying a time that you have, that you need, so that you have that self-fulfillment. Could be 10 minutes with a book, could be a meditation, sitting down for 20 minutes just in a quiet room. What do you need to ensure that your cup is full so that you can continue to give to others?
Very well said again. And if Branched Out had a theme song, what would it be?
I'm going to say Unstoppable.
Unstoppable. All right. Final one. Complete this sentence. The world needs more women who
do extraordinary things.
All the time.
All the time, every day.
All right. So, Lauren, this conversation has been everything I hoped it would be and more. You came here and you gave us the real version, the magazine cover moment, the 6 months without payment, the decision to choose yourself, your daughters, your freedom, and through all of it, you have stayed in motion. You have stayed unstoppable. I want to ask you one final question before I let you go, Lauren. For the person who has been listening to this entire conversation and is sitting there thinking, I want what Lauren has built, what is the very first step they should take today? Not tomorrow, not day after tomorrow. What is the first step they need to take today?
So the first step for themselves is to look at what is it that they want to achieve and break it down into the next 5 steps and go act on them.
To everyone watching and listening, if this episode moved you, if you heard something today that cracked something open in you, share it right now. Send it to the woman in your life who needs to hear Lauren's story. Post it on your Instagram story. Tag us, tag Lauren. Let's get this message out to the people who need it most. And if you have not yet subscribed to the Ravi Athale Perspective, what are you waiting for? Every single week, we bring you conversation like this one. Real people, real journeys, real tools you can use. Hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we will see you in the next episode. I'm Ravi Athale, and this has been the Ravi Athale Perspective.